The afternoon sky darkened over Salem as Clara Whitfield stood before her childhood home, Whitfield Manor. At 20 years old, she had returned to claim her inheritance after spending 7 years at Madame Beaumont's school for young ladies in Boston. The imposing Georgian mansion, once warm with her parents' presence, now stood silent and foreboding against the gathering storm clouds. "Miss Whitfield, we should hurry inside. The rain will be upon us shortly," urged Mr. Barrows, her father's attorney, as he helped her from the carriage. Clara nodded, pulling her woolen cloak tighter. The autumn wind carried the scent of salt from the nearby harbor, mingling with the mustiness of fallen leaves. 7 years had passed since the fever had claimed both her parents within a fortnight of each other, leaving her alone in the world save for distant relatives who had promptly shipped her off to boarding school. The heavy oak door creaked open, revealing Mrs. Winters, the housekeeper who had remained to maintain the property. Her wrinkled face betrayed no emotion as she curtsied stiffly. "Welcome home, Miss Clara," she said, her voice as dry as parchment. "Your rooms have been prepared." Clara stepped into the foyer, her footsteps echoing against the marble floor. Portraits of Whitfield's past lined the walls, their eyes seeming to follow her movement. Her father's stern countenance gazed down from above the mantelpiece, while her mother's gentle smile adorned the opposite wall. "I've maintained everything as your parents left it," Mrs. Winters continued, leading them toward the study. "Mr. Whitfield's affairs are in order, and I've kept an inventory of all household items. In the study," Mr. Barrows settled behind her father's desk, removing papers from his leather satchel. "Now that you've reached your majority, Miss Whitfield, your father's will can be fully executed. The estate is substantial. The shipping business continues to thrive under your father's partners, who will now answer to you as primary shareholder." Clara's attention drifted to the window, where rain had begun to patter against the glass. "And the house? It's mine entirely?" "Yes, along with all its contents. Your father was explicit that nothing was to be removed until your return." Mrs. Winters shifted uncomfortably by the doorway. "Miss Clara, perhaps you'd like to rest before dinner?" The journey must have been tiresome, but Clara shook her head. "I wish to see my mother's rooms first." A shadow passed over the housekeeper's face. "Perhaps tomorrow would be better when—" "Now, Mrs. Winters," Clara insisted, rising from her chair. "I've waited 7 years." The older woman reluctantly led Clara up the grand staircase to the east wing, where her mother's private chambers remained untouched. As the door swung open, the scent of lavender and dust enveloped them. "No one has entered except to dust, as per your father's instructions," Mrs. Winters explained. Clara stepped inside, running her fingers along her mother's writing desk, her perfume bottles, the spine of her favorite book of poetry. Then she saw it, the cedar chest at the foot of the bed where her mother had stored her most precious possessions. "Leave me," Clara commanded softly. Alone, she knelt before the chest, lifting the heavy lid. Atop neatly folded garments lay her mother's wedding veil, delicate Brussels lace, yellowed with age but still exquisite. Clara lifted it with trembling hands, memories flooding back of playing dress-up as a child, her mother's laughter as Clara disappeared beneath the billowing fabric. "I've come home, Mother," she whispered, pressing the veil to her cheek. From somewhere in the house a door slammed shut. Clara startled, the moment broken. Outside, the rain had intensified, lashing against the windows as if demanding entry. Clara carefully folded the veil and closed the chest. As she rose to leave, the mirror on her mother's vanity caught her reflection, pale, solemn, with her mother's eyes and her father's determined chin. For a moment, just a moment, she thought she saw another face behind her own, gaunt, hollow-eyed, watching. She blinked and it was gone. Just a trick of the fading light, she told herself. Yet as she left the room, she couldn't shake the feeling that something in this house had been waiting for her return, and it had noticed her arrival. Clara's first week at Whitfield Manor passed in a flurry of activity as she reacquainted herself with the household affairs. Mr. Barrows visited daily, guiding her through her father's business dealings, while Mrs. Winters maintained her cool efficiency in running the household. Yet beneath the mundane rhythm of daily life, Clara sensed something amiss. It began with small disturbances. Items moved from where she had placed them. Doors she was certain she had closed found standing open, the distinct feeling of being watched when she was alone. At first she attributed these occurrences to her unfamiliarity with the house after so many years away. On the 7th night, Clara woke suddenly, her heart pounding. The grandfather clock in the hall chimed 3. A floorboard creaked outside her bedroom door. Slowly she rose from her bed, wrapping her dressing gown around her trembling frame. "Mrs. Winters?" she called softly, approaching the door. No response came. Clara opened the door a crack, peering into the darkened hallway. A figure in white disappeared around the corner toward her mother's chambers. The hem of a familiar Brussels lace veil trailed behind it. Wait, Clara called, hurrying after the figure. The corridor stretched before her, moonlight filtering through the windows and casting long shadows across the floorboards. When she reached her mother's door, it stood slightly ajar, though she was certain Mrs. Winters kept it locked. Pushing it open, Clara stepped inside. The room was empty, yet the chest at the foot of the bed lay open. Her mother's wedding dress spread across the coverlet as if waiting for its owner. "Who's there?" Clara demanded, her voice stronger than she felt. "Show yourself." Only silence answered her. The window curtains stirred in a breeze, though the windows were closed against the autumn chill. Clara approached the bed, reaching for the wedding dress. As her fingers touched the aged silk, a chill ran down her spine. The fabric was warm as if recently worn. A soft whisper reached her ears, indistinct words that seemed to come from the very walls. Clara spun around, searching for the source. "I don't understand," she said to the empty room. "What do you want from me?" The candle on the nightstand flickered, nearly extinguished by an unseen draft. In its dying light, Clara noticed something on her mother's vanity that hadn't been there before, an old journal bound in faded red leather. She approached cautiously, lifting the book with trembling hands. Inside, she recognized her mother's elegant handwriting. The journal was dated 1802, the year her parents had married. Clara returned to her room with the journal clutched to her chest, determined to uncover its secrets by morning light. Sleep eluded her as she sat by the window, turning page after page of her mother's private thoughts. Most entries were ordinary accounts of a young bride's life managing the household, social visits, minor disagreements with her new husband. But as Clara read deeper, the tone of the entries changed. "I cannot shake the feeling that something is wrong with this house," her mother had written in August 1802. "Thomas dismisses my concerns, but I know what I've seen. The veil moves when no one is near. I hear whispers from empty rooms. Yesterday I found scratches inside the cedar chest that weren't there before, like someone or something was trying to claw its way out." Clara's breath caught as she read the next entry. Dated September 15th, 1802, "I've learned the truth about the veil. It belonged not to Thomas's grandmother, as he claimed, but to his first fiancée, Catherine. Mrs. Winters finally told me after I confronted her about the noises in the east wing. Catherine died the night before their wedding fell from the widow's walk in what everyone called a tragic accident, but Mrs. Winters doesn't believe it was an accident at all." The journal entries grew more frantic in the following pages. Her mother described seeing a woman in white roaming the halls, objects moving of their own accord, and the overwhelming sense of a malevolent presence focused on the wedding veil. The final entry, dated October 31st, 1802, chilled Clara to the bone. "I've hidden the veil in the cedar chest. I cannot destroy it, God knows I've tried. Fire won't burn it. Scissors cannot cut it. Catherine won't leave it, and I fear she won't leave me either. Thomas thinks I'm going mad, but I know what I see. I must protect my family from what haunts this house. If anything happens to me, let it be known. Never wear the veil. Never let it touch bare skin. Catherine's hatred lives within its threads, and she is still waiting for her wedding day." As Clara read the final words, the candle beside her extinguished, plunging the room into darkness. From somewhere in the house came the unmistakable sound of a woman's laughter, soft, musical, and utterly devoid of warmth. The following morning, Clara ventured into Salem, her mother's journal safely tucked in her reticule. She needed answers beyond what the house and Mrs. Winters could provide. The journal had mentioned a seamstress, Abigail Foster, who had altered the wedding veil for Catherine and later for her mother. Salem had changed little in Clara's absence. The same narrow streets wound between buildings of weathered brick and wood, the harbor visible at the end of every eastward street. She found Foster's dressmaking shop on a quiet corner near the town square, a modest establishment with a bell that tinkled as she entered. The shop smelled of fabric and beeswax. An elderly woman looked up from her workbench, spectacles perched on her nose. Her fingers, though gnarled with age, moved deftly over the lace she was mending. "Miss Whitfield," the woman said, showing no surprise at Clara's presence. "I wondered when you might come." Clara stepped forward. "You recognize me? You have your mother's eyes." The seamstress set aside her work. "And I suspect you've come about her veil." A chill ran down Clara's spine. "Then you know." Abigail Foster nodded gravely. "I know what happened to Catherine Prescott in 1801. I know your father gave your mother the same veil for their wedding, and I know what followed." "My mother's journal mentions you," Clara said, withdrawing the red leather book. "She wrote that you warned her about the veil." "I did, though she didn't heed my warning until it was too late." The old woman sighed, gesturing for Clara to sit on a nearby stool. "The veil was commissioned by the Prescott family from Brussels lace, meant to be the finest in Massachusetts. but the ship carrying it sank in a storm off our coast. 3 sailors died recovering the chest it was stored in. Clara leaned forward. What happened to Catherine? She was found at the bottom of the Widow's Walk the night before her wedding. Her neck broken, the veil still on her head. Abigail's voice dropped to a whisper. Some said she jumped in a fit of melancholy. Others believed she was pushed, but I saw her that day when she came for her final fitting. She was happy, eager to be married, and my father gave this same veil to my mother. Clara asked incredulously. Your father was always practical to a fault. The Prescott family returned his gifts after Catherine's death, but he kept the veil too expensive to discard, he said. When he courted your mother, he presented it as a family heirloom. Abigail shook her head. I recognized it immediately when your mother brought it for alterations. I told her its history, but she laughed it off as superstition. But later she believed, Clara said. She wrote about seeing Catherine's ghost, about strange happenings in the house. Yes, Abigail nodded solemnly. She came to me in a panic months after their wedding. The veil, she said, seemed to have a will of its own. She would lock it away, only to find it laid out on her bed. She heard weeping from empty rooms, saw a woman in white watching her from mirrors. What did you tell her? I told her what I'm telling you now. The veil must be returned to Catherine. It must be buried with her at Old Burying Point, with proper prayers and rites. The seamstress gripped Clara's hand with surprising strength. Your mother tried, but something stopped her. The house wouldn't let her remove the veil. And then she died of fever, Clara finished. Abigail's expression darkened. Is that what they told you? That it was fever that took both your parents in the same fortnight? Clara felt the blood drain from her face. What are you saying? I'm saying, child, that your mother was found on the Widow's Walk, just like Catherine before her. And your father, double quotes, the old woman hesitated. He was found in his study, the door locked from within. They said his heart failed him after your mother's death. But those who prepared his body spoke of marks around his throat, as if he'd been strangled by hands wearing delicate lace gloves. Clara's mind reeled with this revelation. Why didn't anyone tell me? Your father's business partners had too much at stake. A scandal would have ruined the Whitfield name and their profits along with it. So they crafted a suitable story, shipped you off to school, and waited for the gossip to die down. Abigail released Clara's hand. But the house remembers, child, and Catherine has been waiting for your return. As if on cue, the shop's bell tinkled, though the door remained closed. A cold draft swept through the room, extinguishing the candles one by one. She knows you're here, Abigail whispered, her face pale. She's followed you from the house. Clara rose shakily to her feet. What must I do? Take the veil to Catherine's grave before the next full moon. Return what was hers with sincere apology for the wrongs done to her. It's your only chance to break the curse before it claims another Whitfield. The seamstress pressed something into Clara's palm, a small pouch of herbs and salt. Keep this with you. It won't stop her, but it may slow her long enough for you to complete what your mother could not. As Clara stepped back into the street, the autumn sun seemed dimmer than before. She clutched the pouch tightly, her mind racing with all she had learned. The truth about her parents' deaths. The curse that had followed her family for 20 years. The vengeful spirit that now had turned its attention to her. In the shop window's reflection, just for a moment, Clara saw not her own face, but that of a woman in a Brussels lace veil, lips curved in a triumphant smile. Clara returned to Whitfield Manor as dusk settled over Salem. The house loomed against the darkening sky, windows gleaming like watchful eyes. She hesitated at the gate, the seamstress's warnings echoing in her mind. Part of her wanted to flee, to abandon the cursed house and its deadly secrets. But where would she go? This was her inheritance, her burden to bear. Mrs. Winters greeted her at the door with palpable relief. Miss Clara, thank heavens. I was growing concerned by your extended absence. I had business in town, Clara replied, avoiding the housekeeper's gaze. Did Mrs. Winters know the truth about her parents' deaths? Had she been complicit in the deception? Mr. Sullivan called while you were out, Mrs. Winters continued, taking Clara's cloak. One of your father's business associates. He requested dinner tomorrow evening to discuss the company's affairs. Clara nodded absently. That will be fine. Please inform Cook. And Mrs. Winters added, her voice lowering. There have been ... disturbances in the east wing today, objects moving, doors opening and closing. I thought perhaps a window had been left open, but they were all secured. Clara met the housekeeper's eyes. It's not the wind, Mrs. Winters. I think you know that. The older woman's face paled. Miss Clara, I don't know what. I visited Abigail Foster today, Clara interrupted. She told me the truth about my parents, about Catherine Prescott, about the veil. Mrs. Winters clutched at the brooch at her throat. Miss Foster has always been prone to flights of fancy and old superstitions. Stop, Clara commanded, her voice sharp. No more lies. You were here when my mother died, when my father was found. You know what really happened? The housekeeper's composure crumbled. What would you have had me do? I'm just a servant. Your father's partners made the decisions, and they decided a fever was more appropriate than the truth. And what is the truth? Mrs. Winters glanced nervously toward the staircase. Not here, she whispered. The walls have ears, especially at night. In the kitchen. Over cups of strong tea, Mrs. Winters confirmed what Abigail had told Clara. Her mother had indeed been found on the widow's walk. The veil tangled around her body. Her father, discovered the next morning in his locked study, bore strange marks like lace patterns pressed into his throat. The night your mother died, Mrs. Winters said, hands trembling around her teacup, I heard her arguing with someone in her chambers. When I knocked, she told me to leave her be. The voice I heard responding to her. It wasn't your father's. It was a woman's voice, cold and full of hate. Catherine, Clara whispered. Mrs. Winters nodded. After they were both gone, I wanted to burn that cursed veil. But each time I approached the chest, I felt hands around my throat, squeezing until I retreated. Eventually, Mr. Barrows sealed your mother's chambers on your father's partner's instructions, and I was forbidden to enter except for essential cleaning. Yet the veil has been moved, Clara said. I found it laid out on the bed last night as if waiting to be worn. The housekeeper's face drained of color. Then she knows you've returned. You must leave this house, Miss Clara. Go back to Boston, sell the property, let someone else deal with its ghosts. Clara shook her head. This is my family's burden. I must end it. That night, Clara prepared for bed with the protective pouch from Abigail tucked beneath her pillow. She double-checked that her mother's journal was secure in her desk drawer, and that her door was firmly locked. Despite these precautions, sleep came fitfully. She dreamed of a woman in white wandering the corridors of Whitfield Manor, her face obscured by a delicate veil, her feet barely touching the floor. In the dream, the woman turned to Clara and lifted the veil, revealing not a face but a skull with empty eye sockets and teeth bared in an eternal grin. Clara woke with a start, her nightgown damp with sweat. The room was dark, the fire in the grate reduced to embers. Something had awakened her, a sound from the hallway. Footsteps, light and measured, passing her door. Gathering her courage, Clara lit a candle and unlocked her door. The corridor stretched empty before her, but at its end the door to the east wing stood open, moonlight spilling through from the windows beyond. I know you're there, Catherine, Clara called, her voice steadier than she felt. I know what happened to you. The house remained silent, but as Clara approached the east wing, she felt the air grow colder. Her candle flickered wildly as she crossed the threshold into her mother's chambers. The room appeared undisturbed at first glance. Then Clara noticed the cedar chest not merely open but splintered as if struck by tremendous force. The wedding gown lay across the bed as before, but the veil was missing. A soft sound from the adjoining dressing room drew Clara's attention. She raised her candle, illuminating the figure of a young woman standing before her mother's mirror. The woman wore a white gown, her dark hair cascading down her back. The Brussels lace veil covered her face. Catherine? Clara whispered. The figure turned slowly. Through the delicate lace, Clara could make out features similar to her own dark eyes, high cheekbones, a determined chin. But the skin was too pale, the eyes too hollow, the smile too empty of warmth. You look like him, Catherine's voice was barely audible, like rustling leaves. Thomas, you have his chin, his brow, his treachery in your blood. Clara took a step back. My father didn't kill you, didn't he? The ghostly figure drifted closer. He promised me his heart, his name, his future. Then he found Elizabeth with her shipping fortune. More advantageous, he said. Our engagement was broken the week before our wedding. That's not the story I was told, Clara said, remembering Abigail's words. They said you were happy to marry, that you fell or were pushed, the night before your wedding. Catherine's laugh was like breaking glass. History is written by those who survive. Thomas spread that tale to preserve his reputation. The truth? I confronted him that night on the widow's walk. He admitted he never loved me, that Elizabeth had been his choice all along. When I threatened scandal, he pushed me. As I fell, I cursed him with my dying breath, that the veil I never got to wear would bring death to any Whitfield bride. My mother wasn't a Whitfield bride, Clara countered. She had been married to my father for years when she died. She wore my veil, Catherine hissed, the candle flame bending toward her as if drawn by her rage. She wore what was mine, lived a life that should have been mine. And when she learned the truth, when she tried to return the veil to my grave, I stopped her. Just as I'll stop you. The candle extinguished, plunging the room into darkness. Clara felt something brush her cheek, the touch of lace, cold as a corpse's caress. "I've waited for you, Clara Whitfield," Catherine whispered, her voice now directly beside Clara's ear. "The last of his blood. When you're gone, my vengeance will be complete." Clara stumbled backward, fumbling for the pouch of protective herbs. Her fingers closed around it just as icy hands gripped her throat. "You will wear the veil," Catherine's voice promised. "You will join your parents, and Thomas will know, even in death, that I have won." Clara gasped for breath as Catherine's spectral hands tightened around her throat. The protective pouch slipped from her grasp, falling to the floor with a soft thud. In desperation, she clawed at the empty air where Catherine's wrist should be, but her fingers passed through insubstantial coldness. "Please," she choked out. "I'm not—" "My father." The pressure lessened slightly. Clara's vision, which had begun to darken at the edges, cleared enough to see Catherine's veiled face inches from her own. "No," the ghost conceded, her voice like winter wind through bare branches. "You are not Thomas, but his blood runs in your veins. The debt must be paid." Clara's mind raced. If she couldn't fight this spirit, perhaps she could reason with it. What if ... what if I help you? Return the veil to your grave as my mother tried to do. The ghostly hands withdrew. Clara collapsed to her knees, gulping air into her burning lungs. Above her, Catherine's form wavered like a reflection in troubled water. "Many promises have been made to me by Whitfields," Catherine said. "All broken." "I won't break mine," Clara insisted, her voice hoarse. "Tomorrow night, I'll take the veil to your grave. Give you the proper burial rites you were denied." Catherine drifted toward the window, looking out at the moon hanging low over the harbor. "Your mother made the same vow. She never fulfilled it, because you stopped her," Clara said, slowly rising to her feet. "You killed her before she could try. I merely showed her the truth." Catherine turned back, the lace of her veil rippling, though there was no breeze. "The truth your father tried to bury along with me." Before Clara could respond, a knock sounded at the bedroom door. Mrs. Winters's concerned voice called out, "Miss Clara?" "I heard voices. Are you well?" Catherine's form grew transparent, fading into the shadows. "Tomorrow night," she whispered, "or I will take what's mine." By the time Mrs. Winters entered with a lamp, Clara stood alone in the room, the splintered cedar chest the only evidence of Catherine's presence. "My God," the housekeeper gasped. "What happened?" Clara retrieved the protective pouch from the floor, clutching it tightly. "I met Catherine Prescott, and I made her a promise I intend to keep." The following day passed in tense preparation. Clara sent word to Mr. Sullivan, postponing their dinner indefinitely. She visited the church, speaking with the minister about performing blessing rites at Catherine's grave. From there she returned to Abigail Foster's shop, seeking additional guidance. The seamstress provided Clara with candles of pure beeswax, a silver knife inscribed with protective symbols, and a small vial of holy water. "These may help," she said gravely, "but your greatest protection will be your sincerity. Catherine was wronged in life. In death she seeks acknowledgement of that wrong more than vengeance." "She seems quite focused on vengeance to me," Clara said, rubbing her bruised throat. Abigail's eyes widened at the marks. "She's grown stronger than I feared. You must complete the ritual before midnight, when her powers reach their peak." As dusk approached, Clara gathered her supplies in a basket. The Brussels lace veil, carefully wrapped in linen, lay at the bottom. Mrs. Winters had wanted to accompany her, but Clara insisted she go alone. "Catherine's quarrel is with the Whitfields," she explained. "I won't risk your life as well." The housekeeper pressed a small pistol into Clara's hands. "This won't stop a ghost," she said, "but the cemetery attracts unsavory characters after dark. Take it for my peace of mind, if nothing else." Clara tucked the pistol into her cloak pocket and set out for Old Burying Point. The cemetery lay on the edge of town, its weathered headstones tilting at irregular angles across the uneven ground. Ancient oak trees cast long shadows in the fading light, their gnarled branches reaching like arthritic fingers toward the darkening sky. Catherine's grave was marked by a simple stone near the cemetery's northern wall. The inscription read only, "Catherine Prescott, 1779 to 1801. May she find peace." No mention of her broken engagement, her tragic death, or the circumstances that had brought her to this lonely plot of earth. Clara knelt beside the grave, removing the veil from her basket. The lace gleamed faintly in the gathering dusk, beautiful despite its tragic history. She arranged her supplies, candles at the head and foot of the grave, the silver knife and holy water within reach. As she worked, the wind picked up, carrying the scent of the sea mixed with approaching rain. Clouds scudded across the moon, alternately illuminating the cemetery in silvery light and plunging it into darkness. Clara tried to ignore the uneasiness creeping along her spine, the sensation of watching eyes from between the gravestones. I need to complete this before midnight, she reminded herself, striking a match to light the first candle. The flame caught, then immediately extinguished as if snuffed by an invisible hand. Clara tried again with the same result. On her third attempt, a woman's voice spoke directly behind her. "Did you think it would be so easy?" Clara whirled around. Catherine stood among the gravestones, more solid than she had appeared in the house. Her white gown glowed in the moonlight, but her face remained obscured by the veil, the same veil that still lay wrapped in linen at Clara's feet. "How?" Clara began. "The veil is merely a tether," Catherine interrupted, gliding closer. "A physical link to this world. But I have grown beyond it over these 20 years. Fed by your mother's fear, your father's guilt, the house's memories." Clara's hand crept toward the pistol in her pocket. "I'm trying to help you find peace." "Peace?" Catherine laughed, the sound echoing unnaturally across the cemetery. "I don't want peace. I want justice. I want Thomas to suffer as I suffered." "My father is dead," Clara said, her fingers closing around the pistol's grip. "What more can you take from him? His legacy, his name, his daughter." Catherine's form flickered, and suddenly she stood directly before Clara, where the veil. "Clara, complete what your mother began." Clara drew the pistol, pointing it at the apparition. "Stay back." Catherine's laughter rang out again. "You cannot harm me with mortal weapons." "Perhaps not," Clara agreed, "but I can stop you from harming anyone else." In one fluid motion, she turned the pistol and pressed it against the wrapped veil at her feet. Catherine shrieked, lunging forward. "No!" Clara fired. The bullet tore through the delicate lace, shredding the fabric that had caused so much suffering. Catherine's form convulsed, her outline blurring as if being erased by an invisible hand. "What have you done?" she wailed, her voice distorting. "Freed us both," Clara answered, reaching for the holy water. She sprinkled it over the damaged veil, then used the silver knife to cut what remained into strips. "Your quarrel was with my father, not with me, not with my mother. It ends tonight." Catherine's form continued to fade, but her rage remained palpable. "You think this is over? So long as Whitfield Manor stands, I will remain. So long as Whitfield blood flows, I will have my vengeance." Clara stood her ground. "Then we are at an impasse, because I will not yield my home or my life to your hatred." The ghost surged forward one last time, her hands outstretched toward Clara's throat. Clara closed her eyes, bracing for the icy grip, but it never came. Instead, a warm breeze swept through the cemetery, carrying the scent of summer flowers rather than autumn decay. When Clara opened her eyes, Catherine was gone. The shredded veil lay in the dirt, now resembling nothing more than tattered rags. The candles at the head and foot of the grave burned steadily, their flames undisturbed by the wind. Clara completed the burial rites as planned, placing the remains of the veil in a small hole she dug at the foot of Catherine's headstone. As she worked, she spoke aloud, addressing the departed spirit. "I cannot undo what my father did to you, Catherine. I cannot give you back the life that was stolen. But I acknowledge the wrong done to you, and I ask for peace between us." Only silence answered her. When she had filled in the hole and said the final prayers, Clara gathered her supplies and turned to leave. At the cemetery gate she paused, looking back at Catherine's grave. For just a moment in the moonlight she thought she saw a young woman standing there and veiled, her face sorrowful but serene. Then a cloud passed over the moon, and when it cleared, the figure was gone. Clara returned to Whitfield Manor well after midnight, exhausted but resolute. Mrs. Winters waited anxiously in the foyer, relief washing over her face at Clara's safe return. "Is it done?" the housekeeper asked. "I believe so," Clara replied, though a seed of doubt lingered. Catherine's final words echoed in her mind. "So long as Whitfield Manor stands, I will remain." That night, Clara slept soundly for the first time since her return. No footsteps disturbed the silence. No whispers emanated from empty rooms. The house felt lighter somehow, as if a long-held breath had finally been released. Yet as dawn broke, Clara woke with a startling clarity. There was one more task to complete, one final step to ensure Catherine's ghost would trouble them no more. Whitfield Manor would have to burn. 3 days passed without incident. The house remained quiet, free from spectral footsteps and mysterious whispers. Clara might have convinced herself that Catherine's haunting had ended with the burial of the veil, if not for the dreams. Each night, she found herself standing on the Widow's Walk, the highest point of Whitfield Manor. In the dreams, Catherine stood beside her, no longer veiled, her face surprisingly gentle in the moonlight. "Do you see now?" Dream Catherine would ask, gesturing toward the harbor. Do you understand what must be done? Clara would look out across Salem, seeing not the town as it existed in 1822, but as it had been 20 years earlier. She watched a younger version of her father escort a beautiful young woman, not her mother, along the docks. Their heads bent close in conversation, their manner intimate. He courted us simultaneously, Catherine's voice would explain. Elizabeth with her shipping fortune by day, me with my modest dowry by night. When he had secured her hand, he discarded me like an ill-fitting glove. The scene would shift to the widow's walk itself. Thomas Whitfield and Catherine arguing, his face twisted with anger, her eyes bright with tears. His hands on her shoulders, pushing. Her body falling, tumbling through the air, her scream cut short by the impact below. The house saw, Catherine would whisper. The house remembers. It holds the truth within its walls. Clara would wake gasping, the dream more vivid each night. By the fourth morning, she knew these were not ordinary nightmares, but messages, Catherine showing her what had truly happened that fateful night in